I am Marcus James Dixon with Gold Derby, and we would like to welcome Jay Prychidny, the film editor on Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. So, Jay, what was your reaction going back when you first learned that Tim Burton was making a sequel to the 1988 film and that you would be editing it? Were you just mind blown?
Oh my God. I mean, the whole experience in general was was definitely a mind-blowing experience all the way through. A lot of the times I thought it was like, is this a dream? Like what? Is this just a fever dream that's happening? But yeah, because I mean, Beetlejuice, the original film, I mean, it came out when I was 7. I saw it when it came out. It was like my favorite film for 2 years. Tim Burton was an iconic director, for the world, but for me personally as well in those years. And, I mean, just the prospect of working on a sequel to what was my favorite movie as a kid was just like, yeah, I mean, unbelievable. I still don't really believe it.
Hmm. In what ways did you use the original Beetlejuice movie as an inspiration for your editing style in the sequel?
I mean, I think one of the things that stuck out to me in the original film editing wise was that Beetlejuice was often kind of treated almost like a Looney Tunes character. I mean, just with the kind of sound effects and so and that was one thing I did ask him. Usually he doesn't like to talk too much about like specifics, about how do you want to approach it and how do you see things, but that was one thing that I asked him, like, is that something you see as being part of the language of Beetlejuice? Is kind of, at times almost cartoonish, almost ridiculous, over the top, kind of with just like silly cartoon sound effects and things. And he said, "Oh yeah, absolutely." I mean, that is I mean, he's not just that. And that was also something never to lose sight of, is that he is a demon. He does have a real malevolence to him, and to not lose sight of that, for him to not become too much of a just a pure parody of himself. But so that was, since Tim was just so obviously on board with that, that was definitely a real touchstone for me, in that, Beetlejuice and his character and the world he inhabits is kind of this kind of heightened, at times overly comedic, cartoonish
Mhm.
kind of vibe, and finding the opportunities to kind of push it in that kind of more extreme anarchic kind of direction.
And yeah, the character, he can change his appearance. He can change his clothing within seconds. Sometimes that's just like maybe a jump cut from the editor's perspective. What's the biggest challenge in working with a wild personality like Beetlejuice?
Yeah, well, I mean, and that was definitely kind of like really a lot of inspiration for just what is the editing language of the afterlife segments, particularly, is that they are kind of inspired by Beetlejuice and his vibe and his ability to kind of, yeah, snap his fingers. And and so for me that kind of translated to um these kind of very abrupt kind of almost very shocking jumps, like music starts blaring. And I mean, and that was something that Tim really responded to, and we ended up pushing more and more, is that this isn't a movie with seamless transitions and like where you're just kind of flowing, seamlessly from one thing to the next. I mean, a lot of scenes have these very abrupt, very shocking, very, just like loud, these huge, pops from just having a quiet moment and then going to stuff really loud. Playing with those kinds of abrupt changes for me was like directly inspired by the Beetlejuice character. And the more we kind of played with that, the more it kind of felt that that was, the editing language for that part of this movie.
And when I think back to the original Beetlejuice, the first image that comes to mind is the dinner table scene where everyone's singing and dancing. It's so iconic.
Yeah.
And there is a similar scene in this one in the church involving another lip sync. And how much fun was that specific scene, that sequence to work on? It was definitely paying homage to the first movie, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that, that wasn't even in the film. That wasn't in the script, in the original version of the script that I read. There was no lip sync sequence at all,
Mm.
and the whole wedding scene was just this it was dialogue, and action and stuff. But, it was all dialogue. And then at a certain point, Tim just said, "No, this whole scene, it's just going to be the song, and it was so bizarre because we got these script revisions that were literally just all the lyrics of the song written out. And it's like, what exactly is this? Um, so I mean, just a while. I mean, he had so many, everyone on the project, but obviously Tim in particular had just these wild creative ideas that would just kind of come up, just very close to shooting or on the day, Um, so, that sequence editorially was actually the most challenging. I mean, that was probably the least fun sequence in terms of just the amount of hair pulling that was involved in, just because it was so, just the production of the movie, but that scene in particular was so just wild and off the cuff and not very pre-planned how that would all go together. Tim was just kind of filming all these things, to different parts of the song. And he said to me, like, don't worry about the song. It's like, we're not following he shot it kind of to follow the song, but the
Mhm.
song is like 7 minutes long. Like it was never going to be that. And he knew it was never going to be that. So he just said, don't worry about the song. Just mash it up is what he'd always say. Just mash it up, cut to whatever you want to cut to, whatever piece you want to cut to, which sounds great, but the actual like the mechanics of how do you get that piece of music to work? You can't just cut to anything. You have to have the music flow, and so that was what was so challenging and hair pulling about that whole sequence, was just to figure out how to just mash up this song, which has all these wild changes in tempo and tone and key. You break it apart and put it back together and make it seem like, it's just totally natural, like it belongs that way.
Well, the finished product is just amazing to watch. So kudos to you and
Oh,
everybody.
thanks.
It was my favorite scene of the whole.
Oh, great. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it is kind of a divisive scene, Some people it's their favorite and some people are like, well, what is this? But, I
Mm.
mean, it is just so strange and unusual and fun, and it has this kind of operatic feel to it. So, it's gratifying that it is a lot of people's favorite scene.
And you worked with some really hilarious people in this movie: Michael Keaton, Winona Ryder, the amazing Catherine O'Hara,
Yeah.
on and on. Were they encouraged to do any improv on set, or was the script pretty much 100% followed?
No,
Mhm.
no. It was, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I call it improvisation. I mean, there were some moments where, I mean, I'm thinking of the wedding scene in particular when like Dolores comes in at the end. That was kind of more improvisational in terms of Beetlejuice's reactions to her. They would just kind of keep the camera rolling and they'd pitch ideas, and Michael Keaton would try this and try that and, try just different things. And then I just pick kind of what I thought kind of worked the best for, just the flow of the scene and for comedic effect. So that did happen for sure, where just kind of on the set, they're just kind of keeping the camera rolling and they're just pitching different things. But for the most part, um, Catherine O'Hara especially, and Michael Keaton, of course, they're not. mm, I wouldn't call it improvisation because it's not like the takes were wildly different each time in terms of what they were saying, but it was very different from the script. So, either like the performers would talk to Tim. Well, I don't exactly know how the process would be, but they would amongst themselves kind of figure out kind of what they wanted to do in the scene, and then they'd kind of do it that way. So, I mean, that was the crazy thing with like editing the film is, I mean, dailies more than anything I've ever worked on, watching dailies the next day would be just a total surprise because, there's a scene that they were supposed to film and they come back with something almost entirely different,
Mm.
sometimes. And that was kind of intense at a lot of the times because still you have to make sure that the whole movie is working together, and things that are set up in certain scenes are set up. And, so it's a lot of kind of thinking on your feet because, people would ask, do we need that line? Do we need that setup? And often I try to say, no, we can get along without that. We'll be fine. And for the most part, we were, but, it was trying to figure out how to strike that balance of when the script is changing so much on the set, just kind of making sure that all your pieces that you still need for the big picture of the movie are still there. So some of those things we did go in and fill in afterwards, like with
Mhm.
ADR and that sort of thing. But yeah, that's kind of how it went. I mean, everyone was just so creatively inspired on the set, and they would just kind of come up with their own ideas. And some every actor had their own process. Some people
Mhm.
would follow the script and some people wouldn't.
Mhm. And before Beetlejuice, you had worked with Jenna Ortega on Wednesday and on Scream 6. I'm curious, what is something that fans may not know about her as an actress that you learned as the editor?
Oh, I I mean to me one of the amazing things about Jenna, especially in that Wednesday character role, is just how much, kind of variation she can give in like a particular scene. And I guess to me why that's so fascinating with Wednesday is because a lot of the times it looks like she's just kind of staring. I mean, she's not doing a lot. She's just kind of staring into the camera or just like very subtly shifting her eyes. And but I mean, she's such a remarkable performer that even in that, amongst all the different takes, she's trying different things. She's trying a take where she's angry or embarrassed or sad or happy or gleeful and it's kind of remarkable to me as an editor to look at all these options, and because I'm not even sure how she's conveying that. That's the kind of magic trick of that character, is that she's not doing a lot, and yet you can kind of see so much that's going on behind her eyes. And I don't exactly know where that comes from. But I mean, as an editor, that was like the extreme fun of playing that, is even though you do have this very deadpan kind of character, you're, you're still have so much emotional variation that the performer is giving you that you can, the fun of being editing that is that you can sculpt and weave that performance to be a whatever emotional arc you
Mhm.
personally feel is the right way to go. So, that's one thing I get to see as an editor that the audience doesn't get to see, is all the other kinds of versions, of that character and the different types of takes that she's doing.
She's going places.
Oh my God, she's amazing. I mean,
Uh-huh.
to me, I mean, I love that kind of performer because she is both incredibly, incredibly technical, like she knows all of the technical aspects of, filmmaking, how she appears, how to perform for the camera, how to hit her marks, all that kind of stuff. But within that structure, she is so free,
Mhm.
to kind of explore and try different things. And, that kind of combination between like, that kind of rigidity of, the technical aspects of what you're doing and allowing yourself just so much freedom to play and be free and to not be self-conscious is just like, I mean, that's just like a gift to, any filmmaker.
I'm curious, is there anything that had to be cut out of the movie that you were just so bummed that it didn't make it into the final product? Maybe a deleted scene that we will all see in the future?
No, no, there wasn't really much in the way of fully deleted scenes. I mean, certainly there's deleted moments, deleted dialogue. Um, but there isn't really, maybe there's some alternate versions of scenes that were filmed. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, there's nothing really huge that's really missing at all. I
Mhm.
mean, the movie, yeah, for the most part, we were trying to just get it up to feature length because sometimes it was almost like, were we ever going to make 90 minutes on this movie? So, yeah, there wasn't a lot that we deleted. It was kind of just about trying to refine and
Mhm.
make best what we had to work with.
What was your proudest moment working on Beetlejuice? What was something that you will look back on years from now and think, I can't believe I pulled off that?
Oh gosh. I mean, to me, the part of the movie that I just never get bored of watching, all the times I've seen it, is kind of just the whole chase through the afterlife, near towards the end of the film that starts with Lydia calling Beetlejuice at the model to go rescue her daughter, and then them going through the underworld and being chased by the cops. And The whole Soul Train sequence going to Saturn, that part of the movie that just gets so wild, kind of ending with, when they leave the afterlife to just before the wedding at the end. I mean, I never ever get tired of watching that because it's so fast and fun. And, there's just such a whole jolt of energy through that whole part of the movie, both performance wise, but also just editing, that I was kind of able to just kind of have this, kind of fast paced, exciting style, to it, and just really keep the motors, and the engine of the movie running on, at full force through that whole sequence. So, I mean, that to me, I think is, my favorite part of the movie. And it's just such a wild and crazy sequence that it was just such a delight to put together. And it wasn't that hard, that part, that whole part of the movie. It was just so fun.
Well, as an editor, do you have a favorite genre to work within? I mean, it's probably always fun to do a jump cut in a horror movie, but what would you say is your favorite overall?
Oh, I don't know. You know, I love working with music. I think just the combination of, music and imagery can just be, if it's aligned right, it can just be this really exciting, kind of thing, and really unlike any other kind of medium, just
Mm.
the combination when you find the right piece of music to go with the right footage and the imagery. It can be magic, it can be really like transcendent almost, as an audience member. um so I mean, I love working with me. I've never done a musical, but at one point I would love to kind of do something like that, or at least something that is very music driven. Although Beetlejuice itself really is incredibly music driven. I mean, Tim really thought about a lot of those sequences as almost musical sequences. Um, so I've cut a lot of dance. I've edited. I worked on a show about a kid's dance studio, so I've cut like dozens and dozens of dance sequences. I cut the dance sequence in Wednesday, where's the viral
Mm.
dance
Oh
sequence that
yeah.
she did in Wednesday. So I mean, that kind of stuff I just, love, and dance and cinematography and music. I just love the combination of all of that so much.
Well, great talking to you, and I wish you best of luck at the upcoming awards season. There's a lot of fun award shows coming up, and we have our fingers crossed for you and the whole team.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much.